Good evening and welcome. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Evanston. The zoning ordinance directs this body to hear applications for major variations, special uses, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator. Depending on the type of matter, this board will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Mary McCauley,
Here.
Scott Gingold,
Yes.
Matt Rogers,
Present.
Myrna Aravallo,
Here.
Violetta Cullen,
Present.
Mary Beth Burns.
Here.
And for anyone wondering, Andrew Gallimore recently resigned from the zoning board, so he will not be present tonight.
So with 6 members present, we do have a quorum, though. Also present tonight is zoning planner Melissa Klotz. This is a formal meeting, and there are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time, so all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the board regarding any matter on the agenda will have the opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. Next, persons who wish to make a statement regarding the matter may do so at that time. Any person with a legal interest in property located within 500 feet of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the board will close the record and begin deliberations. All testimony will be under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony or statement to your personal knowledge. When you address the board, please state your name and address and sign in on the provided sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. Please make sure that you are at a microphone when asking questions or making statements so that you can be properly recorded. All proceedings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. We do have 3 items on the agenda this evening. I know one of them has requested a continuance, which is the second item, but is the applicant for 145963 Elmwood Avenue present? And for 860 Hinman? Thank you. We have had a request, as I mentioned, to continue 1303 Rosalie Street to our meeting on the 15th. I'm assuming that fits in with our not having more than 4 items on our agenda. Is there a motion to do so?
I move that we grant the extension.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that matter will be moved to our meeting on December 15th. With that, we will move to the first item on our agenda this evening, which is the approval of minutes from our meeting on November 17th. Has everyone had an opportunity to look through those, and are there any edits or changes that need to be made? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Our meeting minutes for November 17th will be approved as written. So with that, we will move into the first case on the agenda this evening, which is 145963 Elmwood Avenue, and I would ask that please be read into the record.
Jeffrey K., property owner, applies for major zoning relief to construct a 2-story addition and second-story addition in the D1 Downtown Fringe District. The applicant proposes to construct a 2-story addition for a new dwelling unit with a requested 0-foot rear yard setback where 10 feet is required. Zoning Code Section 61126E. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variance application submitted October 26, 2015, standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plans, elevations, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and DAPR draft meeting minutes of November 18th, 2015.
Thank you. With that, could I have anybody who may be speaking to us in this particular matter be sworn at this time by raising their right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? I do. Thank you. And if you'd please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey K. I'm currently the owner of 1459 through 1463 Elmwood Avenue. My at-home address is 1260 Church Street, Northbrook, Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. And if you would please tell us about your proposal.
Right. Currently, the property at 1459 through 1463 Elmwood Avenue backs up to the train tracks on the east side, has a parking lot to the north side, and a pump station building to the south. Across Elmwood is the police station. The current building has a 0-foot setback in the rear against the train tracks. With no alleyway in the rear or access on the sides, the trash and recycling area, along with the parking, is forced to the front of the site. We plan to enclose that and surround it with bushes so it doesn't appear from the street. In exploring the design options, we were able to bring part of the addition forward, but not all the way because the trash area restricted access to it. But when it came to building over the existing building, practically we needed to use the existing building walls, which are at 0 feet in the rear. Our goal with the project is to take the current kind of uninviting building that's more commercial and turn it into a more transitional district building by adding one apartment upstairs and redoing the entryway to the current units so that they can be covered and lit better, because right now there's not great lighting in that area. And hopefully kind of upgrading the look of the building by staining the existing bricks to match the new bricks, and just in general cleaning it up, putting new windows on it, making it look more like a residential transitional building. That approach would be through staining all the bricks and using stucco on the upper portion, the new portion. And as far as we can see, this wouldn't impact any of the adjoining properties, as none of them, it's a parking lot and a pump station and the train tracks. So hopefully that would just improve the area by making the building look better. That's about it.
So what is the current use of the building?
It is currently like 3 commercial spaces. One of them is completely unfinished. The other 2 are rented by Me's Meals, which is a kind of a small catering company. There are no, I guess, client. The public is never on site. It's just workers that are there. And yeah, that south section that we'd be building over, that's currently just used for storage. It's not finished at all. So that's why we'd be building over that section.
And so what is the overall use of what you're adding in? What's being gained out of this?
We would be remodeling that unit that's currently empty, enclosing 2 parking spaces on the first floor, and then adding a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment on the second floor.
So we're basically adding 1 living unit
Yes.
to the space overall.
And I guess making that one section that's not usable right now usable.
Right.
So,
Can I, just to summarize, the variation you're seeking is just on the 0-foot setback, and that's entirely caused by the existing footprint of the building?
yes, pretty much. We have to build over that, and we can't get to the back side of the lot because it kind of touches all the sides. There's no way to use that back there.
And does your project increase the footprint of the building in any way?
It does to the north over the parking lot, like over a kind of a extended parking area, but not, it doesn't go farther back or anything like that.
In terms of the variation you're seeking, it's not further encroaching in any
No,
way than
no,
the
no.
building already is?
No, it's just building above what's already there.
Melissa, is it safe to assume that the city lot that is just to the north of this property will remain a city parking lot?
That is the current plan.
Thanks.
I have a question. Will your renovations make it all residential, or will the commercial spaces stay?
No, the commercial spaces would stay, and we'd actually have one more usable space right now where it's not finished. But the current tenant has 2 years on their lease. I hope they stay there, and that would all stay commercial.
And the usable space that you're going to make usable is going to be commercial as well?
On the first floor, yes,
first
that
floor.
would be, yes.
Is it intended the residential unit is going to be for lease or to sell?
It would be for rent, so.
So just to be clear, the only area you need a variance for is the area that is above office number 2 on the east side, because that's the only place where you're building second floor walls that are over the rear yard setback.
The two-story addition to the north is a little closer than the 10-foot setback right there.
So but that garage isn't, that enclosed garage is not existing space, is it?
It's not, no.
Okay, so the garage is new space, and that only has a 5'9" setback where a 10 is required.
Yes,
So it's that space in addition to the area over office number 2.
yes.
And tell me the reason why you can't make that garage space comply with the 10-foot rear yard setback?
We couldn't get the conforming entry to the garage with the garage area in front. If we moved it forward, there was no room to get.
Tell me
into
what that
the-
means. What's a conforming area of
Well, there was no
garage?
way to make the turn, basically, into the garage spaces. If we pushed that forward, you couldn't get out of the,
So how deep are the garage spaces? They seem deeper than a normal garage space.
right
They seem
now,
deeper than 20 feet.
right now, I think they're at 23. I don't have that dimension right now.
So if you look at the second floor plan, out dimension is
Mm-hmm.
26 foot 1.5.
Okay, so
So that means
yeah.
that garage space is 26 feet 1.5.
yes,
So a typical garage space is 20 feet,
okay,
which would leave you 4 feet, which would be,
Okay.
that would be a compliant location.
okay. We could make that change.
The other
I
question.
don't know why, though, you would do that. I mean, if you look at the property, I mean, well, I'm saying.
Because it's
if
a
you look-
zoning
if-
requirement?
Well,
That's why
no,
you would
but
do it?
But if you look at the property, it backs right up to the berm that accesses the railroad tracks.
Then why would you offset at 5'9" feet? Why is there a setback there at all then?
Well, I would think that you could store garbage there, but I see
he's
no
not.
reason to put additional space between the building and the berm. Would seem curious to me.
I would be slightly concerned of security of that area too. It's very dark along there, and right now our tenants have asked if we could put more lights back there, so I'd like to not create, if possible, a 10-foot by 30-foot enclosed area along the train tracks.
But what's the difference between a 5'9" by 30 feet and a 10 foot by 30 feet?
That I don't know. I was trying to reduce it as much as I could
Okay.
and make it work, but
In your plans, you don't show what this third floor roof structure is, the structure on the third floor.
That would-
What's that?
just be a roof deck. The roof access point was just a staircase that went up to get to the roof.
So how close is that to the side yard setback, the rear yard setback? Because we don't have a plan of that.
Let's see. That would be the 5'9" on that corner, but we could adjust that if we had to.
What do you
The-
mean 5'9"?
That would match the top of the new garage. That corner kind of meets there.
Do you have a third floor plan? Do you have a roof plan?
There is one on the actual plans. I don't know if there's on this scan set.
So you don't have one handy?
I do not.
So, but what I'm hearing you say is that for the second floor, you want to put that on top of the existing walls, but the third floor, you can handle that structurally to be off the existing building line. Is that correct?
Since it's back farther, yeah, we could support it with the way the staircase walls are going to support it. But they don't quite go back far enough. We'd have to split that lower office in half to get the structure we need for a 2-story addition above it. With just the roof access room, we can structurally hold it, I guess.
So the structure above the garage, if you conform to that 10 feet, then you lose the kitchen and laundry.
That would affect that, yes.
Well, I don't think you'd lose the kitchen and laundry. I think you'd lose some space in the living room, dining room. I think you end up not redesigning the plan.
I would push the kitchen cabinets into the entryway that gets you to the other bedroom, I guess, too. So,
And how many square feet is that unit that you're renting?
I think that unit would be about just under 2,000 square feet.
It's a 2,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2.5 two bath?
Two bathroom, yes.
And are the parking spaces for that unit?
Yes, the 2 parking spaces.
Both parking
would be
spaces are for that unit? And what's your intended rent for that unit?
That I do not have a number for yet.
You don't know what you're going to rent it for?
We're working on it as mainly that's part of our included packet for it, but we were just figuring out as much what we could build at this time so that we could apply for the building permit.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have a tenant lined up for this space?
No, I do not.
Have any of the current commercial tenants inquired about living on site?
They haven't inquired about living on site. They may be interested in renting one of the office spaces that would be created downstairs.
Additional questions? I'll ask for the record if anybody else is here to speak to this, but no one else is in the room except for the other applicants, so I've signed off on that. So anything you'd like to say in summation before we begin deliberations?
My goal is to create a building that can hopefully tie that area together a little more and just improve what's there. That's what I hope to do.
All right, thank you. With that, we will go ahead and close the record and begin deliberations. You may have a seat.
Thank you.
We've had some discussion, but general thoughts from the board?
My general thought is on the variation that's being sought, which is only on the setback that, given the existing footprint of a 0-foot setback, that an addition that matches the current setback is probably, both from a design standpoint as well as from a compliance standpoint, okay by me.
I think also adding the dwelling unit to this project is very much in accordance with the intention of the city in having the fringe core downtown area that would create, a transition to the residents from core downtown. And it's an interesting building. It's a really vast improvement. I mean, that's a beautiful structure. So I think it's a great plan.
So I like the concept of it. I think that the architecture is certainly an improvement. And I do agree that allowing them to build a second floor addition over the existing, absolutely fine. I'm in complete agreement with that. My issue is that garage space and the second floor above that, because that is not the minimum change necessary. And they haven't given me a compelling reason that they can't build it in a conforming location, except that they don't want to.
All right. With that, we will go through our standards. We do have 7 standards that we must find are met for us to make a positive finding on this particular project. And we will go through those. The first is the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. This is a unique property in the fact of where it is situated. It does butt right up against railroad tracks. It has a utility pumping station to the one side. It has a parking lot to the other side, and a police department directly across the street. And we do find it in this oddly named fringe district. of which there are very few buildings that fall under this. But the fact that the neighboring properties are not really ones that have residents, we've not had anyone speak to us to the fact that they would see any change in their use of property. I believe this standard is met. Number two, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does hope that people will repurpose existing structures, make them fit the needs that we have today, as opposed to maybe their original use, find new uses for buildings rather than tearing them down necessarily and replacing them. And also, as was mentioned with this being the fringe district, helping provide somewhat of a buffer between our downtown core area and the residential areas that surround it. This seems like an appropriate use of the space, so that standard is met. Number three, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. When looking at the requested variation, part of this building will be built upon an existing wall, which is something that we almost always approve when we have a second-story addition being built on the first. We have had some discussion about whether the new garage addition off to the one side is necessary to have that same setback, or if it can be adjusted so that it's conforming. But I do believe that this particular property, it is a peculiar situation, and so I think that this standard has been met. Number four, the property owner.
Hey, can I just interject?
Sure.
I disagree. I don't think that there's been any testimony that tells us what the particular hardship is of that property, and I don't think it's unique that if there is a hardship, hardship hasn't been specified.
Well, the hardship is that the berm to the L tracks butt right up to it. So if they push the garage in, then what he's doing is creating a useless cul-de-sac behind the building. It would serve no other purpose. So if you go and you look at the building and you see what simply makes sense in terms of completing that addition, to create a dead-end cul-de-sac there for no other reason than to be in greater conformance, just doesn't really make sense. So I think that the L-tracks create that hardship.
Which is where we're going on standard number four, which is the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. We've just had a discussion on that. I tend to be of the belief that creating an odd space behind there because of the L track or the Metro tracks that butt up against it just creates an odd little space behind there. And so I tend to feel that this standard is met, and I will note that Ms. Burns probably will disagree with me on that one.
I do disagree. I think it's no different than other developments throughout town where there are condominium units or townhouses that back up to train tracks and they have very small backyards. I think outdoor space is something that zoning, we as a zoning board have been supportive of for tenants and homeowners, and I don't think that this is any different.
Standard number five would be the purpose of this variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. We did have a little bit of discussion about the fact that this would be a rental property. My feeling is that with what we've been discussing here on a setback, I think we're talking about less than 5 feet. I don't know that that's going to drastically create additional income for the property as opposed to if it were developed totally within the space that we all would like it to be. So I believe that this standard has been met. Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. The property is basically being developed on top of and beside an existing structure, And that structure has been in existence for a number of years, and this particular owner has not been involved in creating that. So that standard also is met. And number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the ZBA. This is one where we will again have disagreement probably as to whether or not the setback on the garage area needs to fall within the 10 feet, or if it should be permitted to go into that 10 feet. I'm of the opinion that it is fine, that it works to go into that 10 feet. I know that there will be dissension off to one side of me.
I disagree. I don't think that this is the least deviation necessary. We've heard testimony from the applicant that they could make the garage 20 feet deep, and that would be in a conforming location.
I think, while he did say that, my read was that that would eat into other space and would make the turn into the garage difficult. And I think this standard doesn't necessarily need to be applied rigorously, because there are always an inch or two that can be less, and that's usually what we're talking about, is inches or two. And that given the uniqueness of the property, that this is the least deviation necessary.
With that, I have gone through the standards. There has been some discussion on some of them in which some members do not agree with, but is everybody else in general agreement with my finding of standards unless they have voiced opposition to them when we went through?
Yes.
Yes.
With that, I will ask if there are any conditions that we want to put on the property outside of what we discussed. I think that the fact that he's already developing an area for refuse collection in the front, things like that have already been discussed in part of the testimony. So if not, if anybody would like to make a motion.
I'll move in the matter ZBA 15 ZMJV-0101 regarding the property at 1459 and 1463 Elmwood Avenue, that we approve the variation requested, subject to the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the testimony and documents submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
With a vote of 5-1, the motion carries and the project is approved, and you can work with staff on what the next steps will be for you. Thank you. With that, we will move on to the second item on our agenda this evening, which is the matter of 860 Hinman Avenue. And would you please read that into the record?
Kathleen Berry, attorney, applies for major zoning relief to convert 44 rooming house units to multiple family residential units for a total of 102 multiple family residential units with 9 existing parking spaces in the C1A Commercial Mixed Use District. The applicant proposes to convert 44 rooming house units to multiple family residential dwelling units, where 58 multiple family residential dwelling units currently exist, for a total of 102 dwelling units, where a maximum 40 dwelling units are permitted, zoning code section 610.3.4, and to increase the parking by 0 spaces where an increase of 55 parking spaces is required and 9 parking spaces currently exist, zoning code section 616.1.2c. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variance application submitted October 29th, 2015, standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plans, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, DAPR meeting minutes of November 11th, 2015, and an updated site plan of existing conditions that was passed out at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. So just as a point of clarification, what was handed to us this evening is showing the parking spaces that currently exist on the property and the existing structure. Basically, it's a site plan for, I mean, it's not a site plan, it's a map of the building.
It is a site plan of the typical current condition of the property. However, because of the construction of the building next door, the dumpsters for this property have temporarily been moved out of the alley and into some of the parking spaces just for the duration of construction. But typically, there are 9 parking spaces on site.
So the dumpsters will move back to the other property once construction on that property is done?
Correct.
Okay. At this point, anybody who wishes to speak to us in the matter of 860 Hinman, I would ask to please be sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you. And if you'd please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Kirby Kaiser. I work with BJB Evanston in reference to 860 Hinman. I live in Chicago at 5456 North Glenwood.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. And if you would please tell us about your proposal.
Yeah, so everyone's familiar. This is the old Evanshire Hotel, 860 Hinman, basically Lucky Platter to Brothers K, and then a bit there on Hinman, so Main and Hinman. The building historically was a hotel of sorts. Over the years, it was converted into apartments. Some of the apartments, I think the only real thing that differentiates a dwelling unit and a rooming or housing unit is the cooking appliances that are built in, like a stove and an oven. That's something that these apartments are extremely small. It's not exactly necessary. Most people live with a hot plate and a microwave or whatever. So this is just something that it's just a bit of confusion. Why doesn't my apartment that's the same size as my next door neighbor's apartment, why don't some of them have all of the same amenities? So it's something that we've taken on right now to clear up the zoning and to make it clear that all of them can have cooking appliances. So the issue where we don't comply is with parking. But again, this building is extremely old, and this building has neighbors on all sides, and a bigger building is going in on the farther west side of it. So we don't have any additional parking. BJB Evanston does manage other buildings in the area, so we do have other parking options for our tenants. But being so close to the train, why would somebody need a car in that area?
So, sorry, go ahead.
What's your occupancy rate? How full are you?
It's always full.
And is your intention to change the rent for these new units?
No, it won't really change the rent. It'll just make it easier. The situations I've seen where this has been a problem is people, they'll call and be like, do you have any studio apartments available? And we'll be like, yeah, we have one. It's great. And then someone's like, well, I bake a lot. I can't live here. So, it's just some people don't like it. They all rent. But it's just a convenience factor. And if truthfully, my biggest concern with it is safety, and people nobody will have hot plates then. The building's fully sprinklered, the building's fully, it's got an enunciator panel and all that kind of stuff, and it's fully upgraded, but it's just a matter of safety. And, we know what cooking appliances people have if we have an oven and a stove in there. They make really nice ones. Have you seen the new stuff? So they have these little, smaller than this, that you can have 2 hot burners and a nice oven. You can bake, convection oven. They're really nice, all the little stuff. And if we're going to do the upgrades, we might as well do it to all the apartments.
And are those leases month to month, or are they standard?
All years. We do year leases.
And that building's fully occupied? Mm-hmm. And it has been for?
I've worked for the company 11 years, and Evanston's a nice community. There's no reason that, if we lower the rent, they'll always stay full. I don't know, a good landlord that has a lot of vacancy.
Can I ask you, just as a point of, accuracy, are you actually, is Barry LLC putting in the kitchens into all of these units, or you're simply converting their designation?
We will actually put in the cooking appliances. I've looked back, and I do think we did, when we did the electrical upgrade on the building, I think we put the individual breaker and everything in already. It may not be a huge construction project to install these appliances, but yes, we will. We are planning to install these appliances for summer 16 if approved.
Okay. And
So-
they will all
sorry,
be
Mary.
electric?
Yeah, oh yeah, it'll all be electric.
Okay.
And we've done a full electrical upgrade to the building, so it's not going to be a huge construction. Somebody brought up, do you have cooking areas? And yes, we do have, ample with one person, these are small apartments. Has anybody ever seen these buildings? I mean, like, these are small apartments, like maybe 150, 200 square feet, something like that. So, small little, they're exactly what you need.
Are they
So-
considered to be affordable housing in this neighborhood? Like, are they some of the lowest rents?
What is the rent?
Yeah, what's the rent?
$850, $900 a month. So, I mean, it's not super cheap, $775, somewhere in there. It's kind of they're nice. They're very nice. I would say, I mean, I don't know what the word affordable in Evanston exactly means, but they would not be technically affordable in Chicago.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does, yeah.
But are they affordable? If you make $30,000 or $25,000 a year?
Okay.
Can I just ask a few questions so I can kind of summarize my understanding of the facts in the application? So currently there are 102 units in the building,
Yes.
and 58 of them are considered currently dwelling units,
Yes.
and 44 of them are currently considered rooming units.
Yes.
And so you want permission to put kitchen appliances in the 44 rooming units and thereby have them redesignated as dwelling units.
I think it's kind of the other way around. It's more designating them as dwelling units, and then we can put in the kitchen appliances, but yes.
So if granted, you would have 102 units still in the building, yes?
Yeah, no new people.
And nothing about the square footage of any unit would change.
No.
And the current parking that exists for the building would continue to have to serve the same 102 units.
Yes. And the same number of people.
When I went back there, I didn't think that parking was for residents. Is that right?
Residents do park there, yes. They're
Oh.
parking, yeah. As of right now, if you did go back and look, oh, thank you. So there are dumpsters,
Yeah.
and then residents rent the 6 spots or 7
they
spots
rent
that are
them?
there. Yeah, it's all rental.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's nominal. Like we were talking, it's not a big money maker, but it's just a nice amenity that you can have parking if you, like, I know a guy who worked he worked at Great Lakes, so he had to drive every day and he got home late. I know that he parked there for many years, so it's just what residents want parking.
Is there a wait list for parking?
We currently don't have them all rented. We're not full there.
You
And that's-
don't have all the parking spots rented, but your building is completely fully rented.
Yeah. Oh, that's common in Evanston BJB Evanston, we have a lot of, smaller units. So in general, people don't have cars.
It's also right by the Metro.
And it's right by the CTA.
Yeah, the CTA, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I ask Melissa, can I ask you a question? So the materials suggest that the maximum is 40 dwelling units for a building of this size. So can you just explain what the purpose of that limitation is so that we can understand, one, why there are currently 58 when only 40 are allowed, but also what the effect of adding 44 more quote-unquote dwelling units would be?
The maximum of 40 dwelling units is related to the size of the property. So typically, that's a regulation that's in place to control the density so that you don't get an extremely large building on a very small property, and that can then sort of overpower the neighborhood. In a case like this, where the building is existing and is not going to be expanded in any way, it almost becomes a moot point.
That's sort of what I figured. So zoning is in favor of allowing this.
Yes, staff supports it.
And just one more question. There won't be an increase in rent to go from the rooming unit to the dwelling unit.
There isn't currently. I mean,
You don't plan that.
there are people who live there who don't even know they live in a rooming unit. They're just like, oh, I don't have a stove.
Oh, okay.
It's not a real big distinction in this building as of right now.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions? If not, I will once again ask if there's anybody else in the room who wishes to speak to us, noting that there is nobody in the room except for the other applicant. So is there anything, Mr. Kaiser, you would like to say in summation before we begin deliberation?
I appreciate you going by. That's great. Thank you all.
Thank you. With that, we will close the record, begin our deliberation. General thoughts from people? I mean, we're kind of just changing some terminology here and then allowing kitchens to be put in where they're already cooking. It's just they aren't cooking on a stove, they're cooking on a hot plate.
Totally agree. I don't think this proposal doesn't change anything about the building and the facilities that currently serve it. And with the testimony that there's no plan to increase the rent as a result of this, it doesn't implicate the financial interest. So I think we should recommend City Council allow this.
And also noting that the one thing that we are being asked to look into is the parking, and the parking is what the parking is. Without an increase in density, the parking is not really changing. And there's been testimony that it is
Not fully rented.
not even fully rented yet. So with that, we again will have the same standards that we have to go through. The one thing that will be different on this one is because it does involve parking, we will be making a recommendation to City Council. But the first standard for variations is the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. Most people living next to this property will not notice a difference whatsoever because of the fact that there is no change being made to the density, to the outside of the structure, or the existing parking or anything. Unless people actually go into the physical units, they probably shouldn't notice a difference. So that standard is met. Number two, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Again, this is a little weird. I don't know what the zoning ordinance specifically intends to do with rooming units. But the fact that we are keeping this building viable and are making use of a building that seems to be fully rented at this time and not relocating people or anything else, I think is a positive, and I think the zoning ordinance says something about that. So that standard is met. Number three, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. This particular property is standing as is and has for some time. The fact that there are certain units that were designated as rooming house units as opposed to residential dwelling units does make this a unique property, and therefore I believe that standard has been met. Number four, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. I don't know that there is a true hardship in this case, other than the fact of trying to bring these units into compliance with the other 58 units that currently exist in the building and make the building more uniform throughout. But also then, as we discussed, there were issues of hot plates not necessarily being as safe as stoves sometimes, but the building being sprinklered and stuff like that. But I believe that this standard is also met. Number five, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. We have had testimony from the applicant that there's not a rent increase that is going along with converting these 44 units. So therefore, there doesn't appear to be any additional income generated from this change in designation, so that standard has been met. Number six, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This building was built originally with use as hotel rooms, and therefore the kitchens were not necessarily part of that. And so they've been kind of continuing with some of these rooms being basically nothing more than a hotel room for practical purposes of what amenities are provided within the room. And so I believe that standard number 6 is also met. And number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation is among the feasible options identified before the ZBA. Noting that the one thing that we were talking about here is parking. The least deviation, I think, is kind of for us to just kind of go with the status quo that currently is in place with the 9 parking spaces that are there. The building is covering most of the lot. I don't know that we can fit any more parking spaces in, so I believe that that standard has been met. Is everyone in agreement with my findings on standards?
I sure am.
Yes.
With that, I will ask if there is a motion to approve or to recommend approval to City Council.
I move in the matter ZBA 15-ZMJV-0100 with respect to the property at 860 Hinman Avenue that we recommend that City Council grant the major zoning relief requested on the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the documents and testimony submitted, and strictly and specifically, in my view, included in that is actually installing the kitchen units in what would be the former rooming units, the same as they are in any of the other dwelling units.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With 6 votes in the approval, we will recommend approval to City Council, and good luck with your project. Is there any other matter to be brought before the board tonight?
I did send out a tentative 2016 schedule to you guys. I heard back from Mary Beth about a few meeting dates. I didn't hear from anyone else. So it sounds like things will be okay, but we'll formally vote on the schedule at our next meeting. Additionally, if anyone knows of anyone who would be a good candidate for the zoning board and could bring some talent to the board, since we have lost one member, urge them to apply. That's all.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
I have to ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned until our meeting on the 15th of December.